Hi everyone. So this is a little bit different. Certainly not done this before. So welcome to this. Well, it may be the only one, but certainly the first live Q&A that we're doing on the channel here as a celebration of being on YouTube for 2 years. And thank you to those who are attending. I can see that we have a few people in here already. Hopefully we will get a couple more. But thank you for being here, and thank you for your support of Bright Ideas Agency being on YouTube over the last couple of years. It's been a really wonderful journey thus far. We've got over 500,000 views, 4,600 subscribers, and lots of videos here with lots of comments from people saying how much certain videos have helped them with things. So that's always really rewarding to see, and that's the real purpose for doing this, is to be able to connect and to offer the opportunity to really learn alongside me. I don't pretend to be an expert in everything I talk about here, but really want to continue my learning journey and do some of that on YouTube with us. So hopefully that's useful to everyone. Hello Daryl, I see your message there. Thanks for being here. Daryl Webster there, another wonderful YouTube channel that anyone else here should go and subscribe to too, if you want to know about Microsoft 365. He puts out some wonderful stuff. So I do have a few questions to get started with, and then if there's any other questions that you've got, please do put them in the chat. They can be really anything about Microsoft 365, about CoPilot, about running a YouTube channel, about how I run my business, anything like that. So if there's any burning questions that you have that you'd like to get looked at through this session, then please do put them in there. But I will start off with a question that came in from a Liam. Didn't leave a last name, so I don't know Liam who, but Liam, thank you for your question. How does Microsoft 365 Copilot compare to what I expected when it was first announced? So I think anyone who has watched my videos here probably already knows a bit of what I think of that. I did make a couple of videos when we got to the year of since it was first announced. I made a video kind of looking back at what had been delivered versus what had been announced, and that's really been a theme of my of some of the videos on my channel since I made that one. But my real point of view on this is that broadly, Copilot does what was initially promised. It doesn't necessarily with all the kind of glitz and hyperbole that gets maybe thrown into to market it all the time. But in terms of, are we seeing people really saving time by using this technology, then yes, we are. We're seeing it help people, we're seeing it make life easier to certain types of work, but we are still seeing something that I think has a lot of opportunity for a greater level of integration than what we see now. We are, at this point, a year into what is a completely new type of technology that we've not had before. And so I think we need to remember that if you look at the cars of the 1910s or 1920s, they were very different to the cars that came just a decade or two later. And as we've accelerated the journey that comes with new technology over time, we can maybe expect to see big changes over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, but we are very new into this. However, I think it is important to say that there are some big features in Copilot that are still missing versus what was initially announced. I think it's always important to highlight this. As I said in a recent video, when I get feedback from my clients about how they're feeling about Copilot, I don't get feedback about things like we're not happy with what it's called, for example. I don't really hear feedback about how much it costs anymore, but I do hear feedback from people who have been excited about this technology and have gone out there and watched a few videos or read a few articles and have seen things that they're personally excited about, that will help their particular use cases, and then are saying, well, where is this? It's not in the product. And a lot of the time, that thing, unfortunately, I guess coincidentally, is the thing that was announced that isn't there yet. So, as I said in a very recent video, trying to keep Microsoft honest on this one, keep going back to what was announced, where is it on the roadmap, is it coming, how long is it going to be? And I think that's a really important part of this, because there are so many people out there that have seen all of this stuff now. Like, people are excited about this, and that excitement comes from seeing these things. And I really feel that consultants like me are on the front line of mopping up some of the PR issues that come out of having such a long runway between getting people really excited and delivering it to them. So I guess the basic answer to the question is yes. Yes, it is what I expected. It compares well to what I saw when it was first announced, but there is still some way to go. So the next question that I got here was, what am I most excited about for the future with CoPilot? Well, we have an event coming up, I think it's the 16th of September, where there's going to be an event on LinkedIn. And this is almost a year since there was another big event with CoPilot, where there were some fairly big announcements last year at this time. So it seems this kind of early part of September is the time that we get some CoPilot announcements. And so there's going to be some exciting things coming up, hopefully. But the things that I'm most excited about right now is I think there are some really interesting options coming up around extensibility. And I think this is one of the most important areas of CoPilot, frankly. We have the ability to extend CoPilot, to get it into data that isn't in Microsoft 365. I just made a video last week, I think, about graph connectors, the changing in licensing of graph connectors, which is really important to that. But new options like, for example, declarative copilots are just going to, in my view, and I haven't had a chance to play with these yet, they're in private preview still, I think, but these are going to make this whole issue of how do we actually integrate different things into CoPilot a lot clearer, a lot better integrated on the CoPilot side. And I think this is so important, because even the most ardent Microsoft shops in terms of using Microsoft 365 have something that isn't inside Microsoft 365, and the impact of CoPilot is greater if it has a better view of your data. And so these tools that we've got in order to extend it are just so important, and I'm looking to see where that goes. And I think the team that's working on that extensibility stuff is doing such a great job. They're doing such a good job that the other day I made a video about one aspect of it. I went back to record some extra screen grabs, and the interface had changed by the time I went back. So you can't stand still on these things. They're literally changing all the time and getting updated and being made better. But that team is doing such a good job of pulling all this stuff together from what, when it first came out, when Copilot Studio was first released, looked like a little bit of a mess. Now it is so clear in there what the picture is and what the roadmap is for extending Copilot, and I think that's fantastic. I think we're also going to start to see more clarity and more consistency across CoPilot for Microsoft 365. So we're already seeing that in the sidecars, for example, the options are becoming more consistent across all the different apps. And I think that was an issue initially, that you had one way of getting grounding data in Word, you had another way of getting grounding data in PowerPoint, for example. And that was a big issue, because how do you train people? How do you onboard people when the actual way the tool works in different places is entirely different? So I think we're starting to see that. However, there are still high impact features that I think we're waiting for that are going to make a big change to how people work with this product. For example, CoPilot in OneDrive has just become available, and that's great. But some of the things that we initially saw as being announced with CoPilot in OneDrive were not there. I'm really looking forward to seeing this idea of being able to group files in OneDrive. So you can say, hey, I want to see all my files on a project. CoPilot pulls that all together and keeps that group of files so you can add to them and continue to work with them. Almost like a dynamic document library that you're getting created there, which I think is going to be great. And we haven't really seen yet those kind of organizational powers. We've seen some stuff that's like suggesting that we'll get organization in OneNote. We've seen some stuff that's suggesting that we'll get organization in Loop. And that stuff isn't really there yet. So I think this idea of having CoPilot not just as a content generator, but as a helper, is something that is really going to change this. I don't know if we're going to see that on September 16th. But certainly that's something that we know is going to be coming, and is going to be incredibly exciting for this product, because the more it can hold people's hands and do something useful that's just beyond generating content, the more I think people are going to embrace it. So let me take the Daryl. I see that you have put in a question here, so let me deal with this one next before I go to the next and I'm just going to try this, and that worked. So I'm able to add your question to the broadcast there. Hopefully everyone can see it. So what are the most common uses of CoPilot that are saving people time? Well, the one that I think is the most impactful right now, from my point of view, is CoPilot in Teams. And that's not to say that Word or PowerPoint, etc., are not useful. It's just I think the place where I see this having the most impact is in Teams, because it's dealing with a very specific problem that a lot of people experience, in that we know that people are going to more meetings. We know that those meetings are taking up more people's time, and we know that actually catching up and dealing with the outputs of those meetings is having a big kind of toll on people. So that idea that you can go in and with a recorded meeting, and there are limitations, the fact that you can't work with meetings that are outside your organisation is a big frustration, and I think this is something that has to get worked out at some point as people get more and more used to using CoPilot. So there are limitations there, but within the context of having a recorded meeting or having a transcribed meeting and being able to go back and get information from it going forward, being able to catch up on it, it's so useful. And personally, I take the perspective of, I find CoPilot to be a lot more useful in reminding me of things that I know versus going out and finding out things that I don't. I think there's still that question around responsible AI, and how do you use it responsibly? What do those checks look like on the things that it's creating for you that you're maybe not so sure of? But meetings are a really good example of, you were there, you were present, you knew what was going on, unless you do a follow on the meeting, in which case you may not have been. But in most cases, you know what was going on, but you need a catch up because there are so many of them. And CoPilot is able to give you that catch up. It's able to tell you what the actions are, and immediately something can stick out to you if it's not quite right. Because you were there, you were in the meeting. This is something to jolt your memory. So that is an area where I'm seeing a lot of a lot of time saving. I think that's the biggest one for time saving right now. And it depends on how many meetings you attend, obviously, but for those who are attending a lot of meetings, CoPilot in Teams, in my opinion, is almost the perfect co-pilot right now, versus the others that in some cases don't necessarily align with what people are trying to do all the time. Hopefully that answers your question, Darren, and if you've got a follow-up, please do throw it into the chat. So the next question that we got was, what should be our main concerns for AI technology? And I like this question because I think this issue of what is the safety aspect of AI is so important. I know a couple of weeks ago there was that release of information about CoPilot getting hacked, essentially, and that research there. But there's so much more to the safety piece than that. So let's run down it. So first we have the issue of shadow AI. And we've heard of shadow IT. Shadow AI is just people going out and using AI under the radar in the same way that they were using just other non-AI IT systems previously. And I think the latest statistic that I saw was that maybe 70% of workers have used AI perhaps under the radar. So there's a heck of a lot of this going on. And this is something we need to be really conscious of, as previously, number one, the tools that people could go out and share information with. Conceptually, someone could go out from a team and sign up for a CRM that they wanted. Like you decide in your organization you're going to use Salesforce, that's what you deploy. One team is like, I don't like Salesforce, I'm going to go and sign up for HubSpot. And they go and do that, and they move business data in there, and there's certain risks involved in doing that. The biggest one being that the person who set it up leaves the organization and then you have no access to it. But there are certain risks there, and that's something that we've known about and we need to manage. AI is slightly different because there's any number of people out there saying, hey, look at my great new AI app. Look at this place that you can share your information. Look at that place that you can share information. And it may seem really innocuous to do it, to get something that's going to help you with your Excel spreadsheets, or something like that. But once you've actually shared your content, it could be customer data, it could be internal user data, it could be like the people from Samsung that we know about that started throwing proprietary information at ChatGPT before they realized that it might be recorded and used for model training. Once you've shared it, there is no going back on that if you don't know what the privacy policy was, if you don't know what the terms of service were. And so this is something that everyone should be thinking about. And I think that every organization, whether you are deploying CoPilot or AI tools or not, you should be adding AI safety training to those trainings that all of your employees need, alongside things like financial risks or harassment training or whatever it is you do in your business that you are mandated to do. You should be putting AI safety alongside that. And if you are deploying AI tools in your business, CoPilot or something else, you shouldn't just be training your employees on the how, the technical part of this is how you do stuff with it. You should be training them on the why. They should have an understanding of why can this stuff be wrong? Why is it a problem to share the wrong data with it? The other aspect of this is that you are only as good in terms of the responses you're going to get from CoPilot or anything else as your data. And I think this is an interesting one, as Microsoft has been talking about preparing data for CoPilot since I think about May or June of last year. So even before CoPilot came out, there were Microsoft Learn articles, there was Microsoft Mechanics videos on what you should do to prepare for CoPilot. And some people did that, but most people didn't. And we've become really concerned, I think, in this idea of having just enough access. There's so much content out there right now that's talking about, people having too much access. What if someone has access to the CEO's salary? What if someone has access to some proprietary information that they're not supposed to have access to? And how do we lock stuff down and restrict it so that CoPilot can't see on behalf of a user something that's inadvertently been shared with them? They're unaware of it or they've never looked at it, but CoPilot can surface it because CoPilot doesn't care that you've never looked at it. It's going to go out and proactively look at what you've got access to. And that is a concern. I think that is a concern. Personally, I have never seen a situation where that kind of concern has been realised. I've not come across an organisation where someone is like, we hate this CoPilot thing because it revealed all of our salaries. We didn't mean to do that. I've not seen that, but I know people talk about that. I know that's a concern that's been raised, and I'm sure it has happened somewhere. I think that the other side of that we don't talk about enough is too little access to the wrong data, access to stale data. The fact that your process is supposed to be digital. It's supposed to be something that you do and you have a flow, a digital flow to do this. But actually, it still depends on a product catalogue that you look into physically on your desk, or there's some post-it notes on your monitor that you rely upon to get your job done. There's a whiteboard in the corner of the room that everyone looks at and puts certain figures on all the time. And this idea of how do you give CoPilot access to all the things that you are actually using to do your job, I think is something we don't talk about enough, but is so important. I've been working with a client that has had some restrictions on access to SharePoint in the way that things have been shared out. And that isn't too much access, that's too little access. There's been kind of duplication and some technical issues going in there. But the end result has been that users are not able to access files using CoPilot that they are normally able to access in order to do their job. And that is the thing that I have seen that has had the biggest negative impact, in my opinion, on the adoption of CoPilot, in that it's not showing you too much information. It just isn't useful because it isn't showing you enough information or the right information. And so I think we really need to think about that as just enough access, that objective. It is not a one-way street of you might have too much access, so let's take it away. It's really looking at what are people actually using to do their job. And we need to give CoPilot or the AI tool that you're using access to that data, or else it's going to be missing a piece of the puzzle. I think that we need to get used to using AI tools before we worry too much about changing them. I know I've talked about extensibility a lot so far in this session, but actually getting those skills and locking down that you're able to use tools and get value out of them before worrying too much about we have to connect everything together. Just because that first step of the process of getting people used to using a tool like CoPilot is going to inform everything else. You're going to organically find out where those blockers are by deploying this and working out, hey, this is where I'm having to stop my flow and move over to something else. Remember, your teams have already got tools to do all of that other stuff. It's just a matter of, would it be more convenient to do it from CoPilot? And there are certain things that 100% will not be more convenient to do from CoPilot because natural language is not the right interface to do it. For example, if you want to recreate your accounting system in CoPilot using extensibility and you want to write invoices using CoPilot, could you do that? Yes. Is it going to be a nice experience right now? No. We need a lot more in the AI side of things to make that useful. And lastly, we have the issue of societal risk. And I think this is a big one. That we see the pushback right now around social media, for example. And this is kind of the next big technology that's come along that's impacting people after social media. And we see that. So we need to really think about creating a good image in society for using these tools. and we don't want to see a negative societal impact from AI before we truly establish this kind of groundbreaking business impact from it. So number one, using it responsibly, that's so important. But number two, if you use this in your business, you are going to get productivity gains from it. But as a business owner or a manager, you have a decision to make about where are those productivity gains actually going to accrue. If you just consider those productivity gains to be, okay, well, we've gained 20% more productivity over here, okay, we're going to let go of 20% of our team members, and the people who are working with CoPilot day to day are getting no benefit out of it, then I can quite see that we're going to get a negative pushback on AI. But if AI is a catalyst to actually make work-life balance better, to help people to achieve more, not just in work but in life as well, then I can see that some of the negatives that we're seeing right now will start to dissipate a little bit as those who are in work, who are able to use AI, are able to really kind of see the benefits that this is bringing to them. So that's where I'm at on what should be our main concerns for AI technology. There's a lot there, but hopefully that's useful to unpack that. Let's take a little question from the chat here, and then we'll go back to the ones that have been pre-submitted. So how do you see CoPilot evolving in the next 3 years, and what kinds of impact do you expect it to have on users' everyday work processes? And that's from Julian in the Netherlands. Hello, Julian. So in the next 3 years, I mean, 3 years ago, if we went back to pre-ChatGPT, and we talked about what we're doing now with AI, I don't think most of us would believe that we would have come so far so fast. So there is the potential here that in 3 years' time, what we're able to do is as different from what we're able to do today as what we could do right now is as different from 3 years ago. There are those who seem to think that a general intelligence is coming in that kind of time frame, and we will have AI that generally is as good as, if not better than, a human across pretty much everything a human can do. And at that point, all bets are off as to what this technology can do for us. I think the more likely thing is that we see kind of iterative change, as we have done over the course of the last 18 months or so, since we started hearing about CoPilot. And what does that look like? Well, I think we're going to see these agents coming. So CoPilot will be able to do stuff on its own, autonomously, for you, within bounds for security and safety, but we'll be able to do certain things for you autonomously. We've heard about that already. We don't know exactly when that's coming. And we're going to see a lot better integration across CoPilot to make it easier to adopt it and to onboard people to use it. And we're also going to see, I think, as more people get experience with using it, that it's just going to become more of a part of our day-to-day. And that's going to make it a heck of a lot more straightforward in organizations. You know, at the point that you can hire someone and just assume that they've had experience with AI. You know, do you have experience with AI can be the same as, do you have experience with Excel, you know, on a job application. I think that's going to be very beneficial as well, and in 3 years we might get to that point. The extensibility stuff as well, of really putting down to very clearly what is extensibility going to be about. What types of systems does it make sense for a tool like CoPilot to act on? And what types of systems does it make sense for CoPilot to simply absorb information from, to increase its knowledge, to make the responses that you get from it better? And right now, I think this is an area where this isn't clear in a lot of businesses as to, we want CoPilot to be able to do everything. And really the kind of standards around what does it make sense to do what with are not there yet. So I would imagine that we will see a situation where in areas like planning meetings, dealing with the actions, keeping on top of things like actions that arise from a meeting, for example, those types of things will become a lot more automated because of AI. I can imagine that certain aspects of newer technologies, and if Daryl's still on the call, he'll love to hear me say this, in areas like Loop, I think we're going to see a lot more from CoPilot to be able to automate some of the processes that we might have there, to almost have a little kind of database of our project or whatever it is we're working on in a tool like that CoPilot almost helps us to manage. And I can see that being something that's going to come. It's not quite there yet, but we'll get there. I mean, we just got the plan a meeting with CoPilot in Outlook. And one of the things that I think is a little bit odd with that is it will create an agenda, but it's not one of these new Loop agendas, so far as I'm aware. And so pinning this all together and integrating this all together so that we have this ability to work with these new tools. It's not all to do with CoPilot, but it's about CoPilot helping us to use these tools effectively. And so I can imagine that you'll be in a situation where you can say, hey, CoPilot, I want a meeting to do X. And CoPilot is going to understand the context of that, going to understand the calendars of the people that are involved, may even be able to, maybe even request information from the co-pilots that are in other organisations as well. I don't know, that might be something it's able to do and almost coordinate in the background. 3 years out, where will we be? 2027? Yeah, I think stuff like that will be there, and you'll be able to spend a lot more of your time doing the stuff where you add most value, really thinking about whatever task it is you do, you're creative, really kind of adding value in your life as well, versus dealing with busy work. And that's where CoPilot is really going to help us a great deal. Thank you for your question, and if you do have a follow-up, feel free to throw that into the chat as well. So next up, Arjun asked a simple question of, your videos used to focus on Power Platform, but now everything is AI. Are you planning on doing more Power Platform videos again? So I don't know if that's a positive or a negative that everything is now AI, but yeah, I think so. I'm very excited about the stuff in CoPilot Studio, and CoPilot Studio is obviously part of Power Platform. I'm not really at the point with that yet where I gave the example of I just recorded the kind of speaking part of a video about prompt plugins, and then I went back to take a look at doing a few screen grabs for it, and the interface had changed. So this is something that's changing so rapidly right now. That I know some of the videos I've made before on Power Platform have been kind of walkthroughs of you start with A and go to B and C and you end up with an app or something. And I'm not really sure about doing that in that way right now because things are changing so fast. I'm not sure that it's relevant. I mean, you could go back to something that I made 2 years ago on Power Automate, and it's going to look a little bit different than it did back then, but in large strokes it's going to be exactly the same process to go through that. And this stuff is just changing so rapidly right now that I'm not sure that from my point of view those kind of walkthroughs are that useful. I know there's stuff on Microsoft Learn and so on and so forth that gets updated regularly, but obviously I don't have the capacity to go back and update all my videos. So if that's something people would like to see, I would certainly be interested in hearing from you if that's of interest to you right now, because this is these are tools that I'm playing with day to day in order to understand them myself, but I just don't want to commit to this is how you do A, B or C, and then as soon as you've come to it, it looks entirely different and works entirely different. As at best that's not useful to you, and at worst it creates a risk for you because there's something that's changed there that you need to know about, and that isn't in the video that I've recorded. So that's the reason that I've not been doing more of that in this context. And I like the AI stuff. This is something that has really appealed to me, and so I like to make videos that I am interested in and stuff that I want to learn about, and so that's kind of the reason for that as well. I see that we have another question in the chat, so let me put this in here. Our permission management in SharePoint is a mess. I've cautioned the directors against installing CoPilot for now till we get some data cleansing and permission cleansing in place. Yeah, I think that's I mean, this permission management in SharePoint is a mess is the reason, in my view, that we have SharePoint restricted restricted SharePoint search. Yeah, I think that's the way round that it's described, which is the idea of you can have an allow list of SharePoint sites that you are happy with, that CoPilot and Microsoft Search can go out and access, while you get everything else situated. You can have up to 100 of them, so depending on your scale of organization, that may be useful to you, it may not be useful to you. However, I do think it's important, whenever you think about this, if your SharePoint permissions are a mess, and that is revealing information that you don't think people should be able to see, then that's a problem today, whether you've deployed CoPilot or not. You are pretty much okay with anyone who is just inadvertently shared with and is going on and doing their job, and they're not going to look at the data. But if you had a malicious insider within your organization and you have everything shared with them, that's a problem. That's a problem today. It was a problem last week. It was a problem 3 months ago. So I think the context of, CoPilot is maybe usefully making people look at this stuff, and that's great. But it's not like this wasn't a problem, and it's not like it isn't going to be a problem if you don't deploy CoPilot. On the flip side of that, if your concern is, well, we have lots of repeated data, we have lots of stale data, we've gone down and we have 10 different versions of the same file and we need to clean up that type of stuff, yeah, that is a legitimate issue. That is a legitimate problem that we need to get over, because CoPilot is only as good as its data. And if you're grabbing stuff, and particularly now we just type a slash and start referencing something, and if file names are very similar, you can grab the wrong thing and end up with the wrong information. And yes, it is referenced there and you can open the file and take a look at it, but the usability of that isn't great if you've got that situation. We're just getting something rolling out now where you're going to be able to click and open a file picker in business chat to be able to, and some people may have this already, I think it's currently rolling out, to be able to specifically choose a file, which in my mind is a lot more straightforward for these kinds of situations. So depending on the reason as to why your SharePoint is a mess, consider using restricted SharePoint search. Consider the fact that if you really do have confidential stuff that isn't shared correctly, then this is an issue that you need to get sorted out. Consider how much resource you're going to put into that. Consider things like sensitivity labeling and so on and so forth. Look at the options in Purview. But if it's just stale data, then I know what some organizations have done is tried to move some of this stuff out and taken the opportunity to kind of cleanse and deal with. But it's not an easy task. It's not an easy task for anyone. So I'm sorry that's your situation, Izzy Wizzy, and hopefully you get that. Hopefully you're able to get that worked out. Thank you for the question. So the last submitted question that I've got is about YouTube. Do you recommend starting on YouTube to other people starting similar businesses? Is it profitable? Well, let me start with the last part of that. Is it profitable? It depends what you mean by profitable, I guess. My YouTube channel is monetized. It's been monetized for about a year now. It certainly does not pay for the amount of time that gets spent making videos. But I would say at this point, it has paid for the equipment that I've invested in to make videos. And I've recently been able to upgrade my camera, get some different bits and pieces for this. So on one hand it is, on another hand it isn't. But I think the thing with being on YouTube is I enjoy doing this. When I started doing it, I didn't know that I would enjoy doing it. I certainly didn't enjoy doing the first video. I don't think I enjoyed doing the 5th video. But at this point, this has become a habit for me. I enjoy doing it. I've become comfortable with the process of making videos that are focusing on things either that I want to learn about, or are things that are top of mind because I'm working on them with clients right now. So I don't spend my time researching what is the topic that's going to get the most views or that everyone wants to see. It's this is what I'm interested in right now, and if someone wants to watch that video, that's great. If no one wants to watch that video, that's also great, but I do try to put out 2 videos a week. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. I know different people take different approaches to it, and I know depending on what approach you take to it, it could either be something that's very pleasurable to do as almost like a hobby, but it could also be something that's almost like anxiety-inducing. You know, I maybe have a little bit more of that than I would like, but I try to keep myself to the point of I'm focusing on this is a learning experience. Having said that, and I just prepared something for this, so let me jump over to this. So this is a map here that I just put together in Excel of all of the countries that people have watched me from over the course of the last 2 years of having the channel. And the darker the colour, the more views have come from there. So I get a lot of views from the US. I think number 2 is the UK, and number 3 I think is India, and so on and so forth. And that, so you can see I've got a distribution across the entire globe. And this is the picture of business inquiries I've had over that time that I can tie directly back to YouTube. As you can see, it doesn't have the distribution of everything that I've everywhere that my audience is by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't be able to deal with that. I'm a one-person company. But if it wasn't for YouTube, I don't imagine that this would be the case. I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. When I started my business, my focus was on getting customers from Cincinnati, Ohio. But since I started YouTube, more and more of the business that I've been doing has been outside of this area, either other parts of the United States, other parts of North America, or across the entire world. Now, all of those inquiries haven't all turned into business. I'm not doing business with all of those different with companies in all of those different countries, but you can see the impact that that doing YouTube actually has. So I very much, as a kind of secondary thing on YouTube, I almost see it as free marketing, in that I get some benefit out of doing it, I enjoy doing it. It does take up some of my time. I spend about a day a week on the 2 videos that I do on YouTube each week. But the impact of it in terms of the business impact is great. But I think there are other ways of marketing a business. I don't do really any other marketing apart from that. That's all I do right now. I think if I wasn't to do YouTube, I would have to approach it in a different way. And I think if you were starting a business, I wouldn't necessarily advise start doing YouTube because it's going to bring lots of business to you, because it is a slow process, and probably there are more traditional marketing things that you could do initially, maybe in your local area, maybe networking in groups and things like that, more traditional stuff that would have more impact on your business to start off with. So if it's something that you can do because you enjoy it, if it's something you can do without giving yourself great anxiety about this is the number of views I've had, this is the number of subscribers I've got, and if it's something where you are happy to kind of walk the longer path before you have impact, then I do think that that YouTube can be very, very useful. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it if those conditions aren't the case, and everyone's situation will vary with that. So I know there are people out there that give advice on, well, if you do this, you'll be monetized in like 2 weeks and making $10,000 a month or something. The same is true with people talking about AI. So far as I'm concerned, the AI solutions for doing that are crap, and so are the YouTube solutions for that, depending on what you make videos about, I guess. So just bear that in mind. I don't think there's any there's no quick solution to getting there and doing that. So there we go. So that's the last submitted question that I've got. If there's any other questions, then please do submit them to the chat now, and I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll start wrapping things up here. I hope this has been useful to everyone, and I'm certainly happy if it has to think about doing more of these live events. I have to say it is a little bit strange just to be looking at a OneNote page in front of me here, as opposed to having someone here or having a script that's going by on the teleprompter. So it's something different to get used to, and you'll probably find I've been looking down more than I usually do, because I've been looking at some of these notes that I've got here. But I do appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate the support that everyone has given to the channel over the course of the last couple of years, and I do hope that it brings value to you. I very much enjoy doing it. I hope you enjoy watching the videos, and I hope they help you with stuff. And if you do have feedback that you'd like to give, please do feel free to leave it in comments, or drop me some messages, and happy to look at what you put out there. I don't necessarily respond to everything, but happy to hear people's views. So thank you so much, everyone. Until the next video, I think I will have the next episode of Business Boost with Thurman will be being released on Monday. Until then, until the next video, bye bye.